to Puck and Pigskin YYC. Just great sports fans talking mostly about Calgary Flames hockey and Stampeders football, sprinkled with a bit of everything else. Now, here's your host, a Flames fan with a Knights and Kraken backup plan, Jason Bisick.
Welcome to Puck and Pigskin YYC. My name is Jason, and I have two great guests lined up for you today to talk Calgary Flames hockey and maybe a little more other sports talk as well. Auddie James is currently the play-by-play voice of the Drumheller Dragons of the Alberta Junior Hockey League, as well as a huge Flames fan. And James Johnson is a huge analytics guru on Twitter and a huge Flames fan as well. Together, they co-host the Barnburner Hockey Podcast, which drops every week on Apple, Spotify, Google, etc. So without further ado, welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks, Jason. It was it's great to finally have a chat with you. I know that we had talked about this before, and then you reached out to us. So James and I were both super excited to be invited on. So thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's exciting. Me and Auddie, like Auddie said, we're both happy to be here. So thanks for having us on.
Yeah, I've recorded with James before on a show that we won't mention that's long gone in the past and
defunct
and yeah.
We won't go there.
I don't think we ever had Auddie on, did we?
No, we didn't.
Yeah, I don't think I've recorded with
didn't.
Auddie before. I didn't think so.
No, this will be a first, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's always great to talk Flames hockey with other huge hockey fans, and especially when the team is doing really well, off to a hot start, of course, despite the terrible first game. Always lose the first game. It hurts a little more though when it's against the Oilers. So that's
yeah. It's never fun to lose, but especially given the Battle of Alberta and everything, it's not makes it a little more salty when it's a loss to them.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start off by just talking a little bit about the new guys that are on the team this season. We'll start with a guy who played the first two games. Didn't look too hot in my eyes anyway. I think he's been benched for the last 3 or 4 healthy scratch. So let's talk about Nikita Zadorov. James, well, what are your thoughts on Nikita Zadorov so far?
Yeah, so like you said, he didn't have a good starting 2 games, and he found himself benched for that entire road trip, and the Flames went 5-0, so that should tell you something. But in preseason, he didn't fit in with anybody. He didn't find a defense partner that worked. We'll see if he fits with Goodbranson tonight, but I'll just throw some numbers. Like when he was on the ice in those 2 games, the Flames were outchanced 29-25. His expected goals was only 37.15, which is quite low. So basically he didn't fit with the Flames so far. Maybe it's early. I mean, it's only game 7. That can certainly change, but I haven't been too impressed with him, and I wasn't a big fan of that trade when it happened. So hopefully, because I mean he has good defensive impacts when he was in Chicago with a Daryl Sutter team, that I thought that would stay the same or improve. So there's time, and hopefully he can figure it out because he's a big boy. I mean, there's no denying that. He's not going to let you get away with anything, and if he can play, good as well, it's definitely a positive. So
yeah, always scares me when the team is rolling really well, like they are now, and then you make a lineup change. Auddie, do you see any reason why this lineup change may have been made and why he gets back into the lineup tonight?
It's a head scratcher a little bit for me because Yusuf Alamaki will be the one coming out of the lineup. And I think at least, and I think analytically too, James can correct me if I'm wrong, but the past few games, he's been trending in a much better direction than he originally started. And, the eye test and the analytics don't always line up. And I think that a lot of people who focus on the eye test and don't look at the analytics would say that he's, probably justifiable to come out of the lineup. but I think he looked better. I think analytically he was better. I don't know. Like when the old saying of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of comes into question here, right? Like the team is rolling. This is how you develop chemistry, is by playing with the same players and developing that chemistry kind of through and through the more you play, right? So it's a bit of a head scratcher for me why he's coming out of the lineup, especially like I said, they're on the back end of a 5-game road win streak, right? Like they're coming home riding the hot hand right now. So it's a little interesting to me. I don't exactly understand it, and I don't think I ever will, because I'm not in the mind of Daryl Sutter. But hey, you know what? He's given us a lot of reasons to kind of trust the process so far. He's been kind of deploying this team in a way that obviously is working. So I'll trust the guy behind the bench in this decision. But it's a head scratcher from the average fan and someone who follows the analytics and the eye test pretty closely.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, James.
Sure. I'll just jump in here. Auddie was mentioning analytics. So I'll say, Juuso Välimäki, his analytics are definitely a lot better than Nikita Zadorov. He's above 50% in expected goals, Corsi 4, all this stuff, right? So that's what you look for. And, going into this game against Philadelphia tonight, they have 3 of the top 15 lines currently in the league in expected goals. So they're playing very well. So I don't understand taking out a defenseman that has built chemistry, that is good in transition, that has played relatively well. He's taken quite a few minor penalties. So that could be maybe, if he's sitting for a game, that's not the worst thing. But I really don't understand, switching out Välimäki for Zadorov, except for Zadorov is bigger. Philadelphia, they have that, the Broad Street hockey days, right? They have that. They're a tough team. So I guess, putting Zadorov in kind of makes sense in that sense. But yeah.
Yeah, you kind of answered the next question I was going to ask Auddie. I was going to ask if maybe it's possible he's doing better than we see, but James, that kind of answered that when he gave us the analytics there. Oops. Not really doing as good as Välimäki, so I guess it's a mystery.
Yeah, it's a head scratcher. Well, I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. I can't knock it till I see it. So far he's been bad, but you got to kind of stay cautiously optimistic. There's always the chance that, the player maybe does turn it around. Maybe that time in the press box, he could use that as fuel and motivation to, not want to do that again. Who knows? There's a lot of outside factors that come into account when something like that happens. So I guess it's just wait and see. If he continues to be bad, then maybe it's more of a permanent, maybe this is Sutter saying, this is, give me one more chance. Here's another kick at the can. Otherwise, if it's not working, then, we're going to have to go back to what was working before, which was Välimäki in the lineup. So we'll see.
Yeah. Now you mentioned earlier that he's going to slot in beside Eric Goodbranson likely. James, what are your thoughts on Goodbranson so far this season?
So, if you followed me on Twitter during the summer, you know that, well, to put it nicely, I wasn't a big fan of that signing. He's been on 6 teams in 3 seasons. He hasn't performed well in any team. Nashville, Ottawa, Pittsburgh, Vancouver. I can't even name them all. He's a bit of a suitcase these past 3 years, but he's actually looked good so far, and his analytics metrics, they're all solid. They've actually started falling a bit kind of game after game, but he's still, above 50%. And, I think he has 3 assists in 6 games. The guy is playing relatively well, which, I so far I'm eating my words, right?
Yeah, you are. You kidding me?
I'm eating a nice bowl of words right here. I'm just scooping it up because I was wrong so far, but we'll see how it plays out, right? We talked about Nikita Zadorov, and his analytics haven't been good in those 2 games, but in one of those games he was playing 90% of his minutes against Connor McDavid, right? So you have to factor that into account. And Eric Goodbranson and Yusuf Alamaki have been given pretty easy minutes against easy competition. They've been getting a lot of offensive zone matchups. So, Daryl Sutter's giving them good matchups and they're performing above average. So, yeah, Goodbranson, he's shocked me so far. We'll see how it goes. But, yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned playing against Connor McDavid. So in that first game, were any of our D actually any good, or?
Ooh, that's
Is anybody ever really defensively good against Connor McDavid? Like,
that's a good question. I will pull up the numbers here. I don't remember.
While he's pulling up the numbers, I watch a lot of Oiler games because my wife's an Oilers fan, and every single game, Leon Draisaitl scores a goal from the circle, wide open. This game against the Flames surprised me because I believe it was Connor McDavid wide open in the circle with a one-timer, because he worked on that one-timer over in the offseason. So, and I've seen it a few times this season, and it looks pretty good. So I think maybe the Oilers are switching things up a little bit so people aren't kind of catching on to Draisaitl being wide open all the time, but now Draisaitl is wide open on the other circle. So
Yeah,
there's really no good way to defend it. There's no good situation at all. So,
Auddie, what are your thoughts on Goodbranson so far?
yeah, look, I was the same with James. One of my buddies, I'll give him a shout out here, Jacob from the Panther Puri podcast or website network, whatever the heck they are now. Anyway, he's a huge Panthers fan, and I remember when the signing happened. He just tweeted, he said, "Auddie James, have fun." And I didn't see the signing. And I'm like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Like, have fun. So I'm like, oh God, who did we pick up? Who did we sign? Who did we trade for? Like, what's the after effect? And of course, I go right to Twitter, and who's the first tweet that I see? None other than the lovely James Johnson, who was not very thrilled. So that was initial reaction. I was probably the same as James. And I wasn't like as mean as James was, but definitely wasn't happy. But then, like, after the first preseason game against the Oilers, like the very first one, James and I were sitting, we were behind the net, one of the nets, and we just kept looking at each other because he was a couple rows behind, and we just keep looking at each other like this and shaking our heads anytime he came on the ice. Or I remember a dead giveaway right in front of us, leading to a scoring chance. That might have been the Hamblin goal, I'm not sure, but either way, it was it was not good. So, but I'm very happy to announce that he's proved both of us wrong so far. Sure, he's trending a little bit downward, but we couldn't expect him to keep up being a top 5 defenseman in expected goals for and against in the league. We couldn't. That trajectory was going to inevitably come crashing down some point soon. But so far, I'm liking what I'm seeing, and I just hope that it's I hope that it can keep going in a very steady direction. It doesn't have to be like fantastic night in and night out, because that's as a fan, you can't expect that from a player, especially like him. But if he can kind of stay steady, stay afloat, then I'm happy to keep him on the blue line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, James, you said you were going to pull up some numbers there. Did you want me to put those on the screen, or?
Yeah, this one I figured would be kind of funny because we're talking about Eric Goodbranson, and I tweeted this out a couple days ago because if you look at that first chart, it kind of looks like he's given the middle finger. So I kind of saw it as, well, I guess Eric's giving me the middle finger because I was talking trash and he proved me wrong. But I'll kind of just explain this super quick. So you have 5 columns here. Well, the 3 columns here on the very right, those are just for power play. So for Goodbranson, he played a minute on the power play, so we can just neglect that. But for your first column, you have goals for per 60. So when Eric Goodbranson is on the ice, the Flames are scoring more goals per 60 than against. So that's good. Basically, you want all these columns in the purple. That's 2 thumbs
That's
up.
analytics right there.
Okay.
Yeah. And the next column is expected goals for per 60. So basically, the second column is what he was expected to do, and the first column is what he actually did. So
Oh, so he
we
did
can,
good.
we can see in these 2 columns that he's doing better than expected. So you can, I don't know, put that up to luck, maybe a little bit, but he's playing good. He's expected to do above 0, and he's doing above 0. And what I like is that nice middle finger right in the middle, right? That nice Corsi 4 per 60. So it's basically when Goodbranson is on the ice, the Flames are outchancing the opposition. And you asked me to pull up the numbers for the defenseman from the Oilers game, and Eric Goodbranson was on for 18 Corsi 4 and 4 Corsi against. So while the Zadorov and Tanev pairing were getting absolutely destroyed by McDavid and Draisaitl, Goodbranson and Valimaki were good, and they've kept that up. As I said, he's kind of trending down game after game, but he's been much better than I expected. And then the fourth column there is expected goals against per 60. So, he's in the positives. That's what we want, especially from a defenseman. You want those last 2 columns because those are the defense columns per se. So for a defensive defenseman such as Goodbranson, you want those columns to be high because that means that he's preventing chances against, and that's what he's done so far. So just thought I'd jump in because I figured that's the perfect time to explain the charts, because I love that it's kind of giving me the middle finger because I deserve it.
No, that's great. Next, let's move on to a signing that I was excited about. And I guess I was excited about it because he's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion coming from the Tampa Bay Lightning, Blake Coleman. He's very active on social media. He seemed very excited to get going and get started. And he posts a lot. And from what I see on the ice and on the bench, he's always smiling. Seems to always be on. So what are your thoughts with Blake Coleman so far, Auddie?
Yeah, he's well, first, before we talk about him, take a shot every time Rick Ball says that he's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. You'll be hammered by the end of the night.
And I just said it too.
I know that led me to say it. Take a shot
that's
every time.
That's his only selling point, it seems.
Well, it shouldn't be, because I think that he's been performing just as well as everybody's wanted him to. This signing was big. Like, a lot of people looked at the money and the dollars and the term and kind of, and it's fair to assume that maybe it's going to taper off near the back end of the deal, but that's okay. Like, let's focus on the now, which the now is good. We're seeing, great, like from the eye test, we're seeing, for me at least, great forecheck pressure. He's not afraid to go in the dirty areas and play the puck. A great puck mover and a great finisher. He's finding the back of the net, not like flashy by any sense, but he's finding the back of the net either way. I think that I honestly don't have anything bad to say about it, or bad to say, about when it happened, when the signing happened. I just think it was a good deal when it happened. And I'm glad that he's proving that it was a good signing and that it was a good deal, especially too. The thing that I think I like the most about the Blake Coleman signing is the fact that he genuinely wanted to be here. It's not often you see a player, not to say that he's like a superstar, but of that caliber or of that desire, want to come to Calgary or want to come to a market in Canada that isn't Toronto, Montreal, right? It's nice to see, especially, he had other offers. He talked about it on in his press, or in his media availability prior to the Devils game. There were other offers on the line coming from New Jersey, coming from Dallas, where he's Texas is where he's from. He had other offers on the table, and he chose to raise his family in Calgary. So it's nice to see that, and obviously the on-ice performance too, I can't complain too much about.
Yeah, James, what do you think?
Yeah, so Blake Coleman has always been a player where, analytics and eye test, they kind of meet, and everybody likes Blake Coleman, right? There's there's really nothing bad to say about him so far. The biggest thing I've noticed personally in watching the games is that whenever Blake Coleman has the puck in the defensive zone, he always gets it out. He will never give the puck away. He will never turn it over. If he gets that puck in the defensive end, it is always going out. And it's awesome. Like, he's his Corsi 4 is way higher. His expected goals is good. High danger chances is good. Like, everything about Blake Coleman has been good so far. And I have the chart there if you want to pull it up.
Okay.
It's basically exactly what I want to see when we signed Blake Coleman, because he's being used with Michael Backlund and Tyler Pitlik kind of in that first defensive line, right? They're going to play against the opposition's top competition, and he's performing so far, right? Like, his offense hasn't been tremendous, but his defensive impacts have been phenomenal. Like, I think Matthew Tkachuk is the only other player on the Calgary Flames that like has defensive impacts that look this good, because Blake Coleman, like I said, he always gets the puck out. He's gonna prevent chances against. He's a very good hockey player, and like Auddie said, it's surprising that he chose to come to Calgary, because it kind of sounded like, Boston, New Jersey, Dallas, like Auddie mentioned, they were all after him, and he chose Calgary, which is super cool. So nothing but good things to say about Blake Coleman. Yeah, he's working well so far.
Can I jump in real quick too? Just something, another thing that I kind of just thought about now too was, you talk about a Sutter player, but you all can also talk about just like a coach's dream, and I think that's kind of the player that Blake Coleman is. You got to think too, like the matchups that the other team has to put out, like when he's slotting in where he's slotting in, the Flames are always going to be on the upper hand of the matchup if he's on the ice, from what it seems like, depending on what the matchups are. Like, they're going to want to, like, if what has he been playing on, like the third line pretty much consistently, third line, a little bit of second line time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So like other teams' third lines comprised of like legit bottom six guys, when Blake Coleman can be a top six. Like, I don't know. I just think of it like that too. Like, just from a coaching standpoint, you got to think like the matchups that you're able to generate with him slotting where he's slotting definitely favor you if you're the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And everybody kind of talks about, Blake Coleman being a third liner in Tampa, which I mean is a good thing. But if you look at the time on ice in the playoffs and in the regular season, Gaudreau, Gord, and Coleman were actually Tampa's second line based on time on ice. Like, they played heavy minutes, and it's the same with Coleman. So he is a top six forward. So yeah, anyway, nothing but good things to say about him, and it's been good.
Another thing too is if in saying that he's a bottom six player for Tampa really means last year that he was a top six player anywhere else in the league. Let's be real.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
that's not saying, like, that's not a bad thing to be a bottom six player in Tampa.
Yeah, Tampa doesn't have a top six and a bottom six. They have a top 9 and a bottom 3, I think.
Yeah. If you even want to call it that.
Let's move on to Tyler Pitlik. Pitlik hasn't really been putting up numbers, only got 1 assist through 5 games. What are your thoughts, James, on Tyler Pitlik?
Yeah, so I think I looked at his chart a couple days ago, and he's been, good, a similar on that Blake Coleman, Michael Backlund line, where his impacts have been good. I'm just pulling up the chart here, and I don't think they're as good as Blake Coleman, which is expected because, so his defensive impacts actually haven't been tremendous, but I'm actually surprised. I think it was a bit better before I looked at this last game, but his offensive totals are good. His defensive numbers aren't terrible. So he's been, he's just kind of been there, and that's not a bad thing. Like, if he's playing these defensive minutes against tough competition, where he was used mostly as a first line and a second liner last year in Arizona for some reason, but in previous years, he's kind of that third line energy guy or a fourth line role, and it's good. And he's being used in a top 6 role next to Coleman and Backlund so far, and it's definitely not hurting the Flames. So,
Yeah, what are your thoughts on Tyler Pitlik, Gotti?
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Yeah, Pitlik, like for me, small sample size given the fact that he was hurt to start the year. So I don't want to put too much weight on that chart that James just showed, just because it, if you looked at the time on ice, he's played 60 minutes so far. So he's really, it's not a fantastic, there's still lots of time for that chart to look a lot better. But I don't hate what I'm seeing from Tyler Pitlik. I don't think that he was brought here to light up the score sheet. Like you said, James, and he was playing top line, second line minutes in Arizona. Well, say that again. He's playing top line, second line minutes in Arizona. So, it's you take that with for what it's worth. But it's, he's still got a lot of time to kind of show what he can do, and maybe he's still milking it a little bit, not milking it, nursing a bit of an injury. Maybe he's not like completely back, but I'm not like blown away, but I'm also not like, calling for his head or any stretch like that. So,
so we've seen Dan Vladar in, is it 2 games he's played so far?
Yeah.
And both games he hasn't looked too bad. James, what do you think of Dan Vladar so far?
Yeah, I think he really impressed not only the fans, but I think the coaching staff as well in preseason. He played the most games out of any goaltender. I think he played like 5 or 6 out of the 8 or whatever. It was insane. And he has Daryl Sutter's trust, which is not an easy thing to get as a rookie goaltender under Daryl Sutter. So, like when he got that start against Washington, I was like, really? Like, wow, good for him, because, personally, I think of Daryl Sutter teams and I think of riding that starting goaltender until that goaltender can't start no more, right? So I've been impressed with him so far. I mean, he hasn't, been tremendous or anything, but he hasn't been bad either. He's been a decent goaltender, and I'm excited. I'm very excited with that deal because he's only 23 years old. He's like 6'7", and he's showing no sign.
Big guy.
Big guy. I think Calgary definitely has the biggest goaltending tandem with Markstrom 6'6" and Vladar 6'7".
They got to. It's got to be pretty close. Just wait till Dustin Wolf comes in. That'll put that right down the toilet.
Yeah, I mean, having goaltending prospects is never a bad thing to have. And when you have Markstrom for the foreseeable future, Vladar as backup for at least probably 2 years until Wolf is ready, like, there won't be any problems for Calgary's goaltending for a while. Fingers crossed if everything works out. But yeah, I've been impressed so far.
Auddie, what do you think out of what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I'll just echo everything pretty much James has said. I think we're on the same wavelength when it comes to Vladar. It's a good problem to have when you start your backup against the Capitals, and I don't know if that was just strategic by Sutter to try to get him into some like regular season game action prior to the back-to-back, which very well could have been. But it's a good problem to have when he looked like you didn't look incredible. Like, I'm not going to give him that much credit. I think he looked good. He wasn't like fantastic. I think but then again, like when you've got guys like Ovechkin scoring on you, like it's Ovechkin, he's going to score on anybody. So it's you take that for what it's worth. But to be honest, man, I think he's looked good. Like, I don't think that. I think he's looked calm and composed for the most part. He's let in a couple of shaky goals that he probably would have wanted back, just like should be routine shots from like the hash marks kind of thing, or routine saves. But yeah, I'm happy to have him here, and I think that not to like poo-poo too much on David Riddick and Louis Domingue last year, but I think that fans have a lot to be happy about for this tandem this year and for the foreseeable future, for what we can see if Vladar sticks around, or if Dustin Wolf is, he's looking damn good right now. If he's ready anytime soon, right? Like he's looking damn good. So in the crease, I don't think Flames fans have anything to worry about for the next little while. I think they're pretty solid and they're pretty set.
Yeah, that's a pretty good assessment there. Definitely the scoring side of things that have gotten going this season. Finally, it's good to see some scoring. One downside I see in the scoring department is still Sean Monahan. Is something still wrong with Sean Monahan?
I hope so. Not because I want him to be hurt, but I hope that that's like the reason behind it, because otherwise it's a diminished asset at that point. There's, really not much you can get in return. If this is who Sean Monahan is now, you're like, I don't know what you're going to get. Like it's a lot of money to be plunking down on the fourth line, between who's he with, Lewis and Lucic or Richardson or whatever the hell they're doing with that fourth line on any given night. But at the same time, it's justifiable, because I'm going to go back to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like every other line is maybe not producing, but at least playing a role. And Sean Monahan, his style of play and the way he's been playing, I don't think fits any line that the Flames deploy other than what he's doing right now in the fourth line. I'd love to know what James thinks, because I know that he's got a similar, he might have a similar opinion, but
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like in regards to Goodbranson, if you know me on Twitter, I was a big proponent for seeing what you can get for Sean Monahan in the offseason. And now looking ahead to next season, if you want to re-sign Gaudreau, Mangeopani, and Tkachuk, you're going to have to find a suitor for Monahan and potentially Lucic. But that's a question for next offseason. It's definitely on my mind and something I'm worried about. But speaking of the now, Monahan, he's on that first power play unit. He hasn't done anything. I can't remember where they tried him, but I think he was between Mangiapane and Dubé, if I'm not wrong.
You're right.
And that didn't work too well. And now, with Lucic and Lewis, the line isn't terrible. It's, they're not going to score a goal a game or anything, but they're not preventing goals against, which is what Daryl Sutter wants in his bottom six, right? He wants guys, well, Monahan doesn't really fit this, but he wants guys that are going to grind you down. You can put him out there in the final 2 minutes, but I think, Jeff Ward really affected Monahan. He put him in defensive roles, because Monahan, next to Gaudreau, when they were just given offensive zone matchups, offensive starts, etc., they were a dynamic duo, and we saw that in 2019. But then things changed, and like I've looked at his charts, and year after year, you can see his offensive impacts decreasing and his defensive impacts increasing, right? So it's kind of a give and take with Sean Monahan. And now, if you want to pull up that chart that I pulled up, so far this season, he's just been like very, very average. Like he's not good in one particular thing, and he's not bad in a particular thing either. Like he's just he's Sean Monahan basically. And a $6.4 million fourth line center that can't produce is definitely not ideal. Personally, I would attempt to try Monahan with Mangiapane and Dubé again, because I don't love Brett Ritchie beside Dubé and Mangiapane, and Dubé has struggled at the center position so far this season. So I would personally like to see Monahan back with Dubé and Mangiapane and give them decent minutes. But, as Auddie said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they're They went 5-0 on that road trip, so what do I know, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was just going to say. As much as we're complaining about Sean Monahan not doing anything, the team's winning. So do you mess with that?
Exactly. No, that's it though. Like I just don't think that like now's not the time to do it because like you don't want to like let these games slip away. Like you don't want to do what Jeff Ward was doing and throwing lines in the blender early on because you're going to look back at the end of the year like the Flames did and say, what the hell? Like if we had only won that game against Ottawa or that game against Ottawa or every other game they lost against Ottawa. If they were able to win games early on, like it just there's so many like different factors that come into play as to why you shouldn't mess with something that's broken or that's not broken. And one of those reasons is you don't want to look back at the end of the year and say, shit, if we didn't mess around with that lineup that one night against the Flyers and got away with those 2 points, maybe we wouldn't be looking from the outside looking into the playoff picture by 1 point. You know what I mean? Like there's just so many little things, and that's maybe just the way my mind works, and it's not how everybody else's works. I don't know. But like there's just so many things that I think that come into account when it comes to something like that. And I don't know, maybe you guys can make me feel a little more sane by saying that you think of it that way too. Otherwise I'll see myself out.
You're on the right page. You're on the right page there.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, it's hard to look back at previous games when you don't miss the playoffs and say, what if? I mean, look at the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays missed the postseason by 1 point.
Yeah,
one win.
And then I found myself as a diehard Blue Jays fan saying, well, what happened if you didn't blow that series to the Orioles or that series to the Orioles, right? Like it's like little things like that. And I know you got to focus on the now. You can't fix the past, but don't make it so that you get to the finish line and you have to look back and say, well, damn, we missed out by 2 points. And if we'd only beaten the Flyers, if we'd only beaten, the Oilers, something like that, you know what I mean? Like a game that they should have won, but they did something stupid or silly to mess with the flow and, vibe or whatever. I don't know. I'm just going on a bit of a rant here, but
yeah. So we discussed all the new players that cracked the lineup, and most of them brought in by Daryl Sutter to be gritty, hardworking. What are your thoughts so far on the Daryl Sutter system of hockey? Let's start with James.
Yeah, so Daryl Sutter teams have always been good analytically. I'm not a big Daryl Sutter fan. I mean, that's if you on Twitter, I'm pretty much known for that, which I don't love, but I've just never been a big fan of his, probably because of his GM tenure in Calgary where he didn't do a lot of good things. So I didn't expect much when they brought him in. I didn't love that, but so far this season it's been all very good things. And if we're talking defensive zone where they've improved a ton, transition game, which for me is the biggest thing that Sutter's changed and I love. Like I mentioned with Blake Coleman, when he's in the defensive zone, he's going to get that puck out. Same with, playing guys like Oliver Shillington in big minutes, guys that can skate the puck out. His impacts have been good, and this is expected, right? Every Daryl Sutter team spanning all the way back to LA has always been good analytically in terms of, Corsi numbers, possession, this or that. The one thing I will say is I do like a little chart after every game, kind of just giving a brief summary. And one thing I've noticed in doing those is that their Corsi numbers are good, but their expected goals numbers are a bit low. So I can, there's a little bit of cause for concern, but they're 5-1-1. Everything's going well. It's just that you hope they can keep it up, because I go back to last season where Daryl took over and they went 5-0 and then they lost 10 straight. So
let's not hope for that after a 5-game road sweep, please, for the love of God.
Yeah, that would be less than ideal, but he's a good coach. Like, I don't like the guy, but I can't deny that what he does on the ice is fascinating. Like he's a good coach, and it's tough love. We've seen it with players that we interviewed on our podcast that said they've never had a coach that has been this hard on him. And it's working so far. You just have to hope that the Flames continue to buy into his system, because the Flames, every time they bring in a coach, it's that initial buy-in and then kind of trails off. So we just got to hope they keep going.
Yeah, I think it was Ryan Pinder I heard say on the Fan 960 once that Daryl Sutter is a good coach, not a GM.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Auddie, what are your thoughts on Sutter so far from what you've seen?
You know what? His system, you know a Daryl Sutter system when you see it, and what we're seeing with the Calgary Flames is the living definition of a Daryl Sutter system, a very defensively responsible system, or at least tries to be very defensively responsible. And one of the things too that even Juuso Välimäki told us when we interviewed him was, or one of the things that I kind of not pride, but like I started with it, was the fact that there's just so many shots on goal, and that's something that Juuso said was like, yeah, like he kind of smirked and laughed. He's like, yeah, shots on goal, like as if like, oh man, does this guy ever make us shoot the puck? But shooting the puck is great if it's a high danger chance, or if it's a scoring chance, but don't just put the puck on the net just to put the puck on the net. I don't know. Maybe that's the frustration he had. I don't know, but yeah, you can tell for the first, or through the first couple of games, they were out shooting opponents, I think through the first two, like in the 90s, to like they were over double the amount of shots. But yeah, you know what, his system is obviously working. I'm going to kind of just say that lightly right now. Is it sustainable? I hope so. I hope that everybody, like, it seems like everybody's kind of bought in, which is good. We're seeing results on the ice. We're seeing wins. We're seeing chemistry being developed, and we're seeing that the system is obviously working. So I hope that it's sustainable, and I hope that going forward, that it just kind of continues in this trajectory that we're seeing it. But all in all, so far, no complaints. I think I think there's a lot to be happy about.
Yeah, you're totally reading my mind, because where I was going next, you mentioned sustainability. Shots against and Jacob Markstrom, probably going to see him in the vicinity of 65, 70 games, you think, this season? Is Jacob Markstrom's amazing performance sustainable through 70 games?
Well, if I can quickly start, we've seen it in Vancouver. He was the reason that team was good when they were good, and then inevitably they kind of went down the drain a little bit once everybody left. But he was, in my mind, like single-handedly, or pretty close to single-handedly, the reason that they got out of such close games sometimes and were able to be competitive, is because they knew that they could trust the guy manning the crease. And when you see it before, especially as a fan of a team who brings a player in from another team, if you've seen it before, you want to keep seeing it, right? Or you want to have that hope that it's going to keep happening because he's on your team now. So maybe that's where I'm stuck right now, but I do think it's sustainable, and I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility to think that he can keep this up through 65, 70. But at the same time, my whole 65, 70 game kind of gauge is leaning more to the middle now, because we saw Vladar come in against Washington and play the way he did, and because we saw Daryl put him in. So maybe, just maybe, we see a little more of Vladar this year than we expected to. So who knows? We'll see. But all in all, I do hope, and I do think that what we're seeing from Markstrom can be sustained through the rest of the year.
Yeah, James, what are your thoughts on Markstrom? And do you do charts on goalies as well?
There are charts on goalies, but it requires a certain amount of games. I'm not sure if they're up yet. So while I talk about Markstrom, I will also look for those. But he's been a top 5 goaltender by some goalie analytics that I look at. The biggest one for me is goals saved above expected, which is essentially what this model does. Is it takes the shots that goaltender faces and it gives them values. So let's say you take a shot from the point that might have an expected goals value of 0.3. If you get a nice chance from the slot, it's wide open, that'll have an expected goals of like 0.9 or 1, right? So what it does is it takes that information and it determines what the average goaltender would save based on what he has faced. So Markstrom is currently 4th in the league in goals saved above expected with 5.9 goals saved above expected. So that is very good.
He's
Very
4th,
good
you said, or
to start.
5th?
4th.
Can I try to
And
guess the other 3?
Yeah, you can. Sure. Yeah.
Merzlikins,
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Shesterkin,
Yep.
and that's where I
Wow.
stop. Jason, can you help me out?
Merzlikins, Shesterkin.
I'll give you a hint. The other 2 in the top 5 are on the undefeated teams.
Oh, so it would be like Bobrovsky probably.
Yep.
And who else is undefeated? Oh, is it like Craig Anderson or something stupid?
It's Frederick Anderson.
Oh,
that
Frederick
works.
Anderson.
That works.
Oh, I forgot. Wait, the Canes are undefeated still?
Yep.
Oh, side
Yeah.
note. Sorry, I didn't mean to take away from you there, Jason.
I
I was
just-
really intrigued by the top 4.
Yeah.
I just quickly looked at save percentage and goals against average, and he's 4th in both of those categories too
Yeah.
right now. So
So there you go. It checks out. I mean, analytics and those numbers. So he's been tremendous. And I was a big fan. I bought the jersey, day 1 because I watched the guy in Vancouver steal game after game, and he's a great personality from all reports. He's actually a leader in Calgary's dressing room. In his post-game interviews, he's always so positive. Other players like Gaudreau seem to love him. So is it sustainable? Who knows? I like what Auddie said in that, if you can get those games lowered to say 55 or 60 instead of 65 or 70, because Markstrom is a fantastic goalie, but he has,
especially when he's had rest.
yeah, he's had
He's an even
injury
better goalie
history.
when he's had rest, which is another thing, right? Like,
Yeah. And that's the NHL trend, is that very, very few goaltenders play 60 to 80 games anymore. It's becoming more and more of a tandem system. If you look at the Islanders, if you look at the Rangers, et cetera, right? So is it sustainable? We hope so. We hope, fingers crossed, that there's no injuries, and in playing him less, that's going to help. So I love Markstrom. He's been good so far. He's been on that road trip. He was the reason that Calgary went 5-0. There's, Lindholm and Mangeopani, who have had tremendous starts. Basically, those 3 players are why Calgary is off to a great hot start. So,
yeah, I saw a tweet the other day that said Mika Kiprasov, I believe, played 7 seasons over 70 games. I think it was 7 seasons over 70 games.
isn't that insane?
That is insane.
Oh, that's crazy. That's so crazy. I can't believe that. That's like a lot.
Yeah.
Way too much.
Let's head to the meat and potatoes and the exciting part of the conversation. Obviously, Andrew Mangeopani and Lindholm are scoring machines now.
Yeah.
And looking really good. Let's get your thoughts, Auddie, on Mangeopani and Lindholm and even Johnny.
Yeah,
not Johnny not scoring, but he's leading in the assists, I believe.
You know what? He's not. Yeah, he's. I think he tucked one the other night. Did he not? Against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, he got one the other night against Pittsburgh. Nice shot, by the way, top shelf.
It was a great shot. That's vintage Johnny right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Mangeopani, man, as each game passes, Brad Treliving should be like sweating bullets, because this man is going to get paid in the offseason if he keeps this up. So I think all signs are pointing towards him probably keeping this up. He's shown no sign of slowing down since last season when he was good. He seems to be taking another step and amplifying his game even more. That trip to the Worlds, I think, really helped. He was, maybe put a little more respect on his name too from people outside of the market who didn't know who the heck Andrew Mangeopani was. He's been playing incredible. He's always hardest working Flame, night in and night out, I think. And like I said, it's going to be tricky for Brad when it comes time to re-up this guy, because he's going to need some extra zeros on his paychecks in order to keep him around. But what a story too! Just picked. What was he picked? 6th round, I think. Walked onto the Barrie Colts. Didn't even wasn't drafted in the OHL. Walked onto the Barrie Colts. First team all rookie in his first year with Barrie. Didn't get drafted in his first kick of the can in the NHL draft. Wasn't even recognized in NHL Central Scouting. And then now look at this guy. Like this guy's played with a chip on his shoulder his entire career. So, I love it. I think the guy's great. I'm Italian, so knowing that there's he's doing the heritage proud is a good thing. My nonno and nonna love him because it's the only Italian player that they know. And no, it's great. And I'll stop pumping his tires a little bit here and talk about Lindholm, who again is proving how much of a sweetheart contract he's on with the scoring performance and the scoring rate that he's scoring at. And James, I haven't seen your tweets recently, but he was at one point on pace for 103 goals to start the year. He was on pace for that. So definitely some good things coming out of his or off of his stick, and the chances he generates. And talk about like another leader that doesn't have a letter. I think Lindholm is definitely he's leading by example, if not in the locker room, then by example on the ice. So big fan of his, and super happy with everything so far that he's done.
Yeah. And
James, maybe you can pull up some charts on them and have a look at their performances.
Sure.
While you do that, I just want to add you mentioned the Mangeopani playing in the Worlds. The funny thing about him dominating the Worlds is he didn't even make the lineup to start.
Yeah,
he got in because of an injury, didn't he?
I can't remember. I thought Dubé was the one who got in for maybe. I can't remember. You're probably right.
Okay,
I didn't follow it too close.
Maybe it's Dubé.
It might have been Dubé, but the thing too about Mangeopani is he missed like the first 2 or 3 games because the Flames were still playing, and he had to go through COVID quarantine. So it was crazy. Yeah, crazy, and he still performed the way he did. Unreal.
Yeah. So just one more thing to add to Auddie's point about Lindholm is, we got to thank him for bringing in Markstrom, because they're best friends
Swedish
outside
connection.
of hockey. Yeah. And he was a big proponent on why Markstrom signed here. But these are my favorite charts to look at because, it gives you a number value, 92 overall. It's just better to look at, in my opinion, but they're made after the season. So this is for last season. So we can just see. I'll pull up the 2019, 2020 as well.
So that overall number, that would kind of be like his rating on NHL.
Right, exactly.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's a good way to look at it. It's in terms of analytics, it's a percentile number. So basically Mangeopani is in the 92nd percentile of players. So a 92 overall in NHL 20 is a great way to put it. If you can look at last season, I'll explain these charts a little bit as well, but the first 2 columns there are his offense, the second 2 are his defense. So the first column is his goals above replacement, and the second column is his expected goals above replacement. So we all know how good Mangeopani was last year, but he was expected to be 5 times even better. Just looking at those 2 columns, he's so good. And I always go back to a good buddy of ours, Flashlytics on Twitter, and he always describes Mangeopani the best, and he's a B, right? He's on the ice, he's disrupting, he's getting in your face, he's everywhere. Yeah, and when Calgary signed him to that 2-year deal, I wanted that deal to be 8 years, because Like, looking at the numbers, he's consistently improved year after year. He started out in that fourth line role with Garnet Hathaway, and I'm forgetting their centerman, but he worked his way up. He started in the fourth line, and then he made his way up into the third line and second, right? Like, he's such a good hockey player, and there's not enough good things to say about him. And like I mentioned earlier, I wish they would have went 8 years with him a couple of years ago, because that number probably would have started with a 4 on an 8-year term. Now you're probably looking at a 6 or a 7, maybe even. Who knows? But
Yep.
it's next offseason is not going to be enjoyable. It's going to be stressful. But on the now, like, both him and Lindholm are both rocking like 40% shooting percentages, right? So, I make my joke tweets because in the first 3 games, everybody always gets off to a good start, and Mangeopani and Lindholm are both currently on pace for 82 goals this season. Obviously, I know that's not going to happen, but it's fun to joke about, right? Because they've gotten off to such good starts. And do I expect them to continually shoot 40%? No. They're obviously going to have some cold streaks, but they've both been phenomenal. And like Auddie mentioned, with Lindholm's contract, definitely a top 5 contract in the league by far. He is just so phenomenal. He's been amazing ever since Calgary acquired him. And, just nothing but good things to say about both of them.
So really quick on Mangeopani, and I'll ask you first, James. Does he crack the Team Canada lineup for the Olympics?
For the Olympics, that's a good question, because I think their long list of players was already submitted on October 15th.
Which aren't made public, by the way, which we won't see those. They are?
Yeah. Oh,
wait, are made public or they're not?
They're not made public.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I was going to say, I'm pretty sure we don't see those.
No. So I don't think he's going to make it, just because I can't remember. I think Doug Armstrong is Canada's GM. I think he's going to lean towards more veteran players with reputations, which that's fine, right? Like, we already saw John Tavares modeling the Team Canada outfits, and those are interesting. But anyway, which, like, I would personally put Mangeopani on Team Canada over John Tavares, but John Tavares is the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he's making 11 million, so the Olympics are always, more reputation based, which we saw with Seth Jones somehow being the first United States defenseman over Charlie McAvoy or Adam Fox, but
Jacob Slavin,
Quinn Hughes,
like the list goes on.
Who are those guys?
yeah, exactly, right? So I don't think he's going to make Team Canada. I wish he did. And, if he continues on this pace, and if they were submitting rosters, let's say in December 1st, maybe, but I don't think he'll make it, but he should.
Auddie, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to make Team Canada. I think that he would get a long, hard look at the 55-man list. But I don't think that he's going to make this team. I think if we look historically at how Team Canada is composed, they not only do they like to bring veterans and guys like that, but they also like to bring guys who can play center and a wing. Like that Crosby, Marchand, Bergeron line, that's 2 centers and a winger there, right? Like you know what I mean? Like I think they like to bring more versatility. Like it's easy for a center to go play wing, but it's not always easy for a winger to go play center. If that makes, obviously that's a little different there. I think that lineup wise, it might be a little bit difficult for him to crack amongst some of the centers that are going to be playing wing for Team Canada. Because I have a feeling they're going to go center heavy and bring a lot of people who are naturally play center over to play wings or play on a wing. So I don't think he's going to make it over some of the likes of those players that we're going to see. But damn, they probably thought long and hard about Andrew Mangeopani before they put their team together. I bet he's making a good case for it.
Let's maybe finish off with talk about Matthew Tkachuk. He seems to be back to Matthew Tkachuk that we saw before the Jake Muzzin puck flip. What are your thoughts on that, James?
Yeah, so another player that is coming on a contract year, right? So you expect him to play up to his standard at least, and he's been good, especially defensively. He's been really solid. It's very similar to Blake Coleman, actually, like almost identical, which is good. It's he's a pest. He's a bit of a unicorn in the league. Him and his brother, right? Like they do so many things that no other player can do. Gonna get the skin of the other team, but I've been impressed with Tkachuk. His scoring isn't where I thought it would be. He struggled to get on the score sheet a little bit, but he's playing well, so that'll come, right? Like I have no concerns with Tkachuk besides the oncoming contract discussions, because contract discussions with a Tkachuk are never fun. So
They stink.
Just ask the Ottawa Senators.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Auddie, what are your thoughts on Tkachuk? But he's got 2 goals and 2 assists, I believe, by the way, doesn't he, for 4 points? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that would be right. Look, the thing is the Muzzin puck flip thing. Look, I was a big time talker about this when it happened. That was it. Like Tkachuk is like, he's too emotional, blah blah blah. And maybe I was being too hard about him. When we talked to Haley Salvian of The Athletic about Matthew Tkachuk, she brought up a really good point, saying that you can't judge a player's performance based on a 56 game season, which was already coming off of a season that was shut down from COVID in front of no fans, right? There's a lot of factors that go into maybe why he wasn't playing the way that he was playing last year. And I think the fans is a big reason. I think that he's a player who is fueled by the crowd, whether it be on the road or at home. Fans, they boo him, they yell at him, they cheer for him. I think he's very fan driven, and I think that having people back in the building is definitely helping his game. But I don't think he lost anything in saying that. I don't think he lost his game last season. I think maybe it was just, you could call it what it was, an abbreviated season under circumstances that weren't ideal, right? Getting COVID tested 3 times a day and going on a plane and going right to your hotel. There's a lot of things that you got to take into account from last year as to why he maybe didn't perform the way he should have, or we would have liked him to. So yeah, this year I'm happy to see the Matthew Tkachuk that we knew and love and that we missed last year. And you see him like with a little bit more of a pep in his step now, and the charts and analytics are showing that he's an effective player, right? It's good to see. And I never really thought he lost it. And after we talked to Haley about it, it kind of put it into a new light for me. So I'm really liking what I'm seeing with Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah, tonight they face off against the Philadelphia Flyers. Flyers are 4-1-1, I believe, and Calgary 5-1-1. So it should be a good game. Carter Hart, Jacob Markstrom. Let's just maybe go outside the Flames for just a brief minute and say, I'll ask you, James, first. What are your big surprises so far throughout the NHL, if any, and thoughts on what we've seen so far outside the Calgary Flames?
Yeah, so I think kind of the big obvious would be that Buffalo is like 4-1 or whatever they are.
My
like,
dude, what the hell?
I know, sorry. But I'll switch. I'll let Auddie talk about that one if he wants, and I'll talk about I'll talk about the Chicago Blackhawks, because obviously there's some things going on that me and Auddie will get into on our podcast, but they signed Seth Jones, they brought in Marc-Andre Fleury, and everybody expected them to be a playoff team. I personally didn't, because if you look at the numbers, Seth Jones is not a good defenseman. He was like 4 years ago, but that he's a very common, analytics versus eye test because, people point to his time on ice and he plays a lot, which he does, but are those minutes good? And for him, they aren't. I thought they would be a bubble team, maybe compete for a playoff spot, but they are currently 0-6-2, which that's a big surprise for me. And for a team that's doing well, I mean, both Florida and Carolina are heavily analytics driven organizations, so I both expected them to be near the top of their divisions. Washington for me is a bit of a surprise. Every year, a common analytics talk is kind of that, the Washington Capitals will eventually start to, go down and, Ovechkin's getting older, et cetera, but they continually prove people wrong year after year. And I picked them to not make the playoffs, and they're definitely going to make the playoffs, I believe. So that would be a couple of my, big surprises.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on Chicago. When Fleury went there and decided that he was actually going to play, I thought that was a huge boost. And somebody from Edmonton went there too, wasn't it?
Caleb Jones.
Caleb Jones.
Right.
They made a couple other moves as well that I thought were pretty good. That I thought were definitely going to make them a really good team. Plus, Taves coming back, of course. And yeah, like you said, James, they haven't been good at all. Mind you, there's a lot of stuff going on there that we won't get into because we don't have nearly enough time to talk about that. But a lot of outside factors there, which could be contributing. Auddie, what are your surprises so far this season?
You know what? I'm not going to take the easy way out. I'm not going to go with Buffalo. My surprise, because Buffalo is, we can unanimously agree what a surprise of a start they've had. But for me, it's the Sharks. I definitely didn't think that they made all that many moves that made them better. But apparently, Evander Kane getting suspended by the NHL was just what the doctor ordered for the San Jose Sharks, because this team, they look like the San Jose Sharks that were competing in the Stanley Cup final against the Pittsburgh Penguins not that long ago. They're like Erik Karlsson looks like he's not like going back to form, but definitely looks better than he has been. I don't know. I was totally surprised that when we did our preseason rankings, I had the Sharks finishing dead last in the Pacific, and they still can. There's still lots of time, but through 6 or 7 or 8 games, how far we are along now for each team, I definitely think the Sharks are my biggest surprise. I did not expect them to be this good, but time will tell. We'll see what happens. There's still lots of the year left to go and lots of hockey left to play. So there's still lots of time for that to be proven correct. Hopefully I'm right, because I don't want to look like too much of an idiot in my predictions.
All right, so very early in the season, but quick prediction before we cut this off. Auddie, who's winning the Stanley Cup this year?
Florida Panthers.
That's probably not a bad choice.
The Florida Panthers, without a reason to doubt. I don't know. I don't mean without a reason to doubt. That's a pretty bold take, but they're showing no signs of slowing down. Sam Bennett has found his role in Florida, and the team looks unreal. Bobrovsky looks like he's bouncing back. There's a lot of good things going for them, especially since they're going to be having a new bench boss. So, looking forward to seeing what they do. They're a fun team to watch right now.
Yeah. James, what's your prediction?
If Vegas can somehow acquire Jack Eichel and he's healthy before the playoffs, I will say Vegas. But if not, I will go with my second favorite team, and that is the Carolina Hurricanes, because when I first got into the numbers, they're an organization that is very analytically inclined. Their assistant general manager, Eric Tulsky, is someone who I am fascinated by, and he has such a big influence over that organization. They stole Ethan Bear from the Oilers. Like, they're such a fun team, with the storm surge and all this stuff. They're what I want hockey to be. So I'm gonna say that the Carolina Hurricanes are gonna win the Stanley Cup.
That wasn't quite as good of a steal as it was a Kotkaniemi. Was it Kotkaniemi? Yeah.
Yeah.
That
was just funny.
I have to see more of that. I'm going to make a bold prediction. I'm going to make a bold prediction and say St. Louis is going to win again.
No, that's a good.
That's prediction. A good take, though. They're playing well.
They're playing well. They're 5-1 right now, and they're looking pretty good. Whether if they can sustain it, it'll definitely be good for them. So, yeah. Where are you predicting the Flames to finish, Auddie?
Well, the way I had them just I had them just scraping in at the start of the year. I still think I need to see more before I change away from just scraping in, because the Pacific is starting to prove to be a division that there's like a lot of good teams off to good starts, and there's teams like Vegas who aren't off to a fantastic start, but they're Vegas and they can just pull it out, right? So, I think I'm going to stick with my original choice and say that they just scrape in. I don't know what that placement would be with wild card and everything like that, but I'll say they get like the last or second. They're a wild card team. I'll say that they're a wild card team.
All right, James, what do you think?
I think in our predictions for our podcast, I said either third or fourth in the division. I think I'll stay exactly that. They might get second if they continue at this pace, but I'm going to say, Vegas will rebound. They'll probably still get first in the division. Edmonton has been very solid. So I'm going to stick with and say they're going to be third. And hopefully we get a battle of Alberta in the playoffs, because that would be very fun.
I also predicted them to finish third in the division. So I did see a tweet a little while ago that said the talks between Vegas and Eichel are cooling off. So,
so maybe
take that
maybe
for
Brad,
what it's worth.
maybe Brad put down the pizza bread and picked up the phone instead. We'll see.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Oh man. All right. Well, it was great talking with you guys, and we'll definitely have to do this more often. I love talking Flames talk. So you can, of course, see James and Auddie on the Barnburner Hockey Podcast, and I'll post all of their links in the description. So, gentlemen, let's get another win tonight.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. And thank you again for having both of us, man. This is a lot of fun, Jason.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, and maybe we'll get you on down the road on ours, or
that'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. We'll make it happen.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Awesome.